So the Cowley brothers going to Huddersfield then, which comes as a bit of a bolt out of the blue. Most of the talk last week was connecting them with Sheffield Wednesday. There had been some talk of a Huddersfield approach and compensation being agreed with Lincoln and the Cowleys turning it down. But it was all kind of brushed over quite quickly as though it was a complete non-starter. Most of the media focus was on them potentially going to Sheffield Wednesday. You know, a lot of back and forth and reports being denied that there'd been any contact or any conversations or anything like that. I think there's probably been plenty going on behind the scenes. So now we've reached the point where it's Huddersfield who've agreed terms with the Cowleys, and I guess first impressions is it does make more sense than Sheffield Wednesday. I know Sheffield Wednesday fans won't be pleased to hear that, but I think parachute payments is a big thing. And as I said in my previous video about Cowley and the links with Sheffield Wednesday, you know, he's a big resources man, he's big on his numbers and his metrics, and that's the way he'll want to plan going forward. He'll want to know there's a budget, he'll want to know that he's got a time frame to do his job and he's not necessarily a pressure straight away. And I think the level that Huddersfield are at in the Championship in terms of stature, I think it's a very similar job to the one he's just had at Lincoln, in that he can play down expectations at the same time as knowing deep down that he's in a position to be very competitive. And I think that's the position he probably finds himself at Huddersfield. He'll have time to weigh up what he's got. I think Huddersfield find themselves in a little bit of a mess, to be honest, because they come down with a real mishmash of a squad that, you know, there's a fine line between shopping shrewdly, as they were doing, to get promotion under David Wagner, and then just buying on the cheap. And, you know, I mean, it's not like they've forked out some good money, but you know, you look now and it just looks like a bit of a patchwork squad, and you're not really sure, you know, who is who's holding down what key positions and you know what's the overall identity of the team going to be. Well, I'm sure Cowley will get to the bottom of that sooner rather than later. I think what Huddersfield fans can expect is a very incremental approach. I think he'll deal with one issue at a time, and if, you know, that starts with the defence, then it starts with the defence. I don't think he'll try and fix too many problems at once. I think he'll go in, he'll study the videos, and he'll study all the metrics that he uses, that he's, you know, whatever his key performance indicators have always been at Lincoln, he'll test them against the Huddersfield players in terms of their performances so far this season, and he'll try to get some quick answers. And then I think he'll identify one key problem, address that problem, then move on to the next problem. I think that the progress that he's made at Lincoln over the past few years has always been very incremental. He only solves one problem at a time, but he solves it properly, thoroughly. And, you know, when he moves forward that knowing that the last problem he solved is nailed down, and now it's on to the next one. And I think that's the kind of approach that Huddersfield fans can expect. I think that the last thing it's going to be is overnight success, but I also think that it's progress. The kind of progress that he's liable to make is the sort of progress where supporters will see the improvements that he's talking about. They'll see it for themselves, so will be encouraged. I think they'll feel like they're witnessing the improvement themselves, and so it's easy to buy in that it's a step-by-step process. And I think that's the way he works as a personality, as a manager. He is very much ready for the Championship, I would have thought, based on what he's done in the past couple of seasons in League 2 and so far in League 1. He has shown different sides to himself as a coach, and, you know, I mean, I'm talking about Danny here as one person. I'm not entirely sure what it is that Nicky brings to the table, but I presume he complements him in certain ways as well. Because Danny, as an individual, does come across as a very, very rounded individual, and, you know, unusually so, that what you might consider to be perceived weaknesses just aren't there, and it's possibly because there's two heads getting together here, and you know, you're talking to brothers who are very close and completely trust each other, and you know, a normal manager-assistant relationship any normal manager assistant relationship would really struggle to get the same wavelength level of understanding that those two guys will have. So, I think that as a team, they're certainly ready for the Championship. We're talking, this is a managerial duo that has effectively come up with the set pieces that England used at the last World Cup. When the England national team and Gareth Southgate and people at St George's Park are basically doing fact-finding missions at Sincil Bank and using set-piece routines for the England national team, we're not just talking about any old sort of League Two manager coming forward here. I think a lot of people have seen the signs, but it's the way that Lincoln have evolved in the last year or two that I found particularly impressive, and it suggests that they're ready for a bigger challenge, and the fact that they can go in a few different directions to solve the problems that they need to solve at Huddersfield is also encouraging. As for Lincoln, where do they turn now? There's one name that immediately leaps off the list of potentials for me. If they're to go down the route of, they've had a manager poached from themselves, they've got presumably compensation. It was a clause in the Cowley's contract that meant Lincoln got a certain amount of compensation. So if they choose to use that compensation now to find a replacement, you've got a club there with a serious process in place, with a system and a way of doing things from game to game and preparing for matches that is full on extroverted thinking, real good systems in place. And there's one manager who stands out to me at the moment who's operating in League Two, who I think could go in and fit that model straight away, and that's Matt Taylor at Exeter. Very much an end product man, very much did an excellent job taking over from Paul Tisdale last season in a very pragmatic, results-driven way. Completely at odds with the way that Tisdale run the club. He just came in and immediately made it, put his own stamp on the team and created a new identity around Exeter that was, a much more masculine approach. And he's very, very driven in terms of he comes down on players when they don't take chances. He's very much about what happens in both penalty boxes, not necessarily what happens in the middle third of the pitch, but he's also very much about metrics, I believe, and that side of things. I think I think if he was to slot in after the Cowleys now and be given the full run through the systems that the Cowleys had in place, if the Cowleys were willing to cooperate with something like that, and give some pointers of what they left behind, I think Matt Taylor is a manager that could come in and fit that model and kind of just keep things going along in the same way. He won't try to change the style or philosophy. He'll be very much in tune with the same values of winning football matches, the game management side of protecting a lead and running down the clock, and all the things that the Cowleys become notorious for in the lower divisions. I think Taylor's demonstrating a lot of those qualities and getting players to do that side of the game very well. And the results he's been getting at Exeter so far. To use an example of the similarity between Matt Taylor and Danny Cowley, there was some big departures last season. Jayden Stockley, the key one. Other players left in the summer. And rather than try to replace them, Taylor was insistent he wanted numbers. He wanted depth to the squad so he could manage the Saturday Tuesdays. Almost obsessed with the preparation time, the turnarounds, those kinds of things, and managing those issues on a week-to-week basis. Very much like Danny Cowley. Always, top of mind is how quick have we got to turn around, what's our preparation like for the next game, what depth have we got in particular positions, and I just see them very similar in approach, same sorts of personalities. And I think if Lincoln are looking to continue what the Cowleys have built and just carry on as if this hasn't happened, I think the closest they're going to get is Matt Taylor.